All right, here we are again. Last week, some folks were asking about Alaskan handles on waffle irons. They're the wire wound ones. Why they call them Alaskan handles? Probably because it sounds kind of cool, and it's a marketing thing, I guess. I don't really know. Any other reason for it is probably just as valid as that. But I'm going to have a look at those and show you a couple of things that I picked up here last Saturday. Kind of happy with some of the things that I got a hold of and show you a little project I got finished. We'll say hi to everybody here quick first. We got Pat Z, Cynthia, she's here. RT Scott. Jim, he's here. Jim 44. Hog Wild Cast Iron Restoration. Billy Lee, complaining about the weather. Not too bad here. Got a couple 3 inches of snow the other day, and it's going to be a bit cooler than it has been, but it's pretty much normal this time of year. Lows around 0, gets up to around 15, 20 during the day, and that's pretty typical for first week of February. Chris Salverson, T. Reed, good to see you. I think I got most of them. JIR, he's here. Gary Henning, nice to see Gary. See if I missed anybody here quick. Thick said hi to everybody. Ronald Coward, he's here. Let's see. Gary Henning. You got a friend that lives in Louisiana and talk a few times a week, usually about your weather. Melanie Matson, Farm Boy, he's here. Get caught back up here, Waffles. Yeah, I'm not going to do any cooking this week. Take a little break from that, which is good. I'm feeling a little bit run down tonight. Kind of unusual. Usually I'm fairly tired by the time I get around to doing the stream. A little short on sleep. Got plenty of sleep the last few days, but still just a little bit under the weather. Not feeling bad, but just not feeling as good as I should. Anyhow, Dan's here. Since Huey is here, I'll show you something that I've been working on for Huey. He sent me, back together you, nice little Lodge number 7. Why am I backwards this time? Nice little Lodge number 7 waffle iron. And the handle was broke off a bit. So I welded her back together. And turned out fairly good. But there's always some little flaws that I find or end up with. One thing I've learned welding cast iron, especially really thin cast iron like this, is leave it alone. You always end up with some little spot that didn't get quite 100% penetration. You see right there, it looks like a crack, but it's not. That's just a little spot where it didn't burn quite all the way through. And you can see it's welded in on the other side good. Didn't quite go all the way through, one little reason or another. And you want to go back and just fill that little spot in, and every damn time you try that, it ends up blowing a big hole or creating a huge problem that you didn't have before, and you wouldn't have had if you just left the damn thing alone. So I managed to do that. The thing I was most concerned about was getting the handles right, because when you weld something, it wants to pull a bit and bend it one way or another. And I managed to get the handles right so that the halves of the waffle iron close up right. They're not hugely out of line. Turned out pretty nice as far as that goes. But I got her all welded up, and like I said, turned out pretty nice. A little bit of sculpturing there. It's not entirely invisible, but I was hoping it would be, but pretty good on the inside too. It turned out fairly good, and I'm happy with it. I gave her a coat of seasoning quick just to keep her from rusting up in the mail, and I'll get that sent back out here sometime later on this week. Like I said, overall, I'm pretty happy with it. But I don't know why my camera's reversing things on me all of a sudden. That's why it kind of looks weird in here. Didn't look right. Uh, didn't look right when I turned the camera on, and now I know why. I'll have to see if I can fix that. But like I said, that turned out pretty nice. You know, if you look close, you'll be able to see a couple of flaws in it, which, you know, always drive me nuts. The goal is to make the repair as invisible as possible. But it's better than being in 3 pieces instead of the 2 it should be. But anyway, let me back up here a little bit. Bought some box elder syrup for the waffles. That sounds good. There's a lot of things you can make syrup out of that you don't generally, mean maple syrup, but there are other syrups out there. I got caught up with all the comments here for the most part. Mostly folks saying hi, as we tend to do here early on in the stream. And back down at the bottom. 6 drops here. Good to see you. All right. The Alaskan handles. I think it was Griswold that first started the name Alaskan handles. I could be wrong, but I think it was. And that's what they're talking about. It's that twisted wire handle instead of a wooden one. It's a twisted wire handle. You can see inside there's a little rod with a eye on the end, and then the twisted wire. The Griswold ones that I've seen are all pretty much just straight all the way through. So what is worse, a crack or a repair for value? Kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You know, most repairs, most guys either braze it or weld it. It's really obvious that it's been repaired. So that kind of takes it down more than just a crack would, but a good repair that blends in good, it's probably about the same. And it's tough to say exactly, how much value it'll lose. If it's something really rare and unusual, it can be a fairly good amount of money, but it's kind of a small percentage, really. But something common, something common with a crack in it pretty much eliminates all the value. If you have like a 3-notch lodge, a really common one that has a crack in it, I mean, it pretty much destroys all the value anyway. So it doesn't really matter if it's been repaired. Economically, repairing it doesn't really work out that great. I mean, you're not going to gain back enough value to make it worth your time and effort for most of them. I like to do it for a hobby. And it's nice if you have something that has a lot of sentimental value. You can, somebody drops your great grandma's pan, snaps the handle off it. You can put it back on and have it look halfway decent and still keep on using it. Yeah, some people buy a repaired piece, but not a cracked one. Like I said, it kind of depends on exactly what you're dealing with. But anyhow, like I said, that's a, what date is that? I think that's the 1908 patent. That's a bit older one, the slant logo, Griswold. I got to fix that damn thing with everything reversed on me. But anyway, that's that. Now, this is a crescent that I have. And you see that's got a bit different kind of a handle. It's bigger on the end. It's got a little bulge in it. Kind of like handles on Finex skillets. So, and it's got, instead of having a loop on the end of the bolt that holds it, just kind of a knob. And these are screwed in. Most of these, like the Griswolds, you could have either the wire handles or a wooden handle. The wooden handle would just fit inside the socket here, and it's got a hole and a thread, the threaded hole drilled into this part here to hold the rod for the handle. Been using a cracked Wapak for cornbread for years and no issues. Yeah, that's a lot of times you're not going to have a problem with them really if they are cracked, but you can, especially if you're frying with them because it tends to expand more. But in the oven, it's usually less of a problem because they expand a lot more a lot more evenly. Lettering is fine, not reversed. That's on my end, coming back through my feed. Everything's backwards. So, as long as it's going out right, I guess it doesn't matter then. Yeah, why do they crack around the handles more? Yeah, it sticks out more when if they get dropped, it tends to land on the handle and breaks them. Do I take the handles off to restore, and how? Usually with a wire handle, you don't really need to take it off. But if you do, it can be tough because it's usually rusted in there, and it's damn near impossible to just unscrew. That one's a little bit loose, actually. It might work. But it's usually damn near impossible to unscrew them without snapping it off in the hole and then having to try and fix that. But the wooden handled ones, a lot of times you can get those out fairly easy. They usually have a little brass screw or a little brad nail in them. And you pull that out and you can usually, can't make a noise, you can usually pull them out and get the wooden handles off. Whoops. Didn't need to click on that accidentally. Take you off. Well, I don't need to hide it. I just want to take, there we go. Interrupted myself here. Forgot what I was talking about. Do you taper the welding points? I don't. You're talking about TIG welding, I assume. I've never actually TIG welded anything. I've done a lot of MIG welding, stick welding, that sort of thing. But yeah, TIG welding I've never actually done. So I use for this, what I use is a high nickel. It's a 55% nickel wire and argon gas, straight argon for welding. Preheat everything and then weld it up like you normally would with a wire feed. Ideally, for welding cast iron, you would use a argon mixed with 2% oxygen. But the problem with that is it's expensive. It's kind of hard to find. It works great for cast iron because that little trace of oxygen will burn out impurities like sulfur and phosphorus in cast iron. You'll get a lot stronger weld, but it's the only thing you can use it for. If you tried to use something with oxygen on anything else, you would end up with just hideous welds. Don't have a waffle iron, but I think it'd be fun to make burgers like big White Castles. You probably could. Would I be interested in welding up a number 9 Victor? I can give it a try. I don't make guarantees, and I do the best I can with them. But yeah, send it on, and I'll see what I can do with it. If you catch this mud, I was able to pick up a Griswold Colonial breakfast skillet. Found a Griswold deep fryer. Cleaning them both up. Cool. You see, yeah, you don't see the deep fryers very often. They're kind of a deep, look like a deep saucepan. Usually you should have a lid with them and a basket. They almost never have the basket. If you come across one that has the original basket in it, that really adds the price. But what else was I going to say? Oh, yeah, I was going to show you a couple of things that I got here recently. Went to an auction Friday or Saturday, and I ended up with 3 waffle irons because my masochism knows no bounds, and it takes a bit of doing to clean up a waffle iron. First one I got, one of them I paid quite a bit for, but I don't have it. You don't see them very often, and I wanted to get one. First of all, this is a Alfred Anderson heart-shaped waffle iron. Not uncommon. I've got 2 of them, actually. But this one is unusual because that has a acorn hinge on it. Now this was made by Griswold around 1900, early 1900s anyway. Andresen actually contracted with Griswold to make their Kroomkaka pans and their waffle irons, Kroomkaka irons, waffle irons. Before that, they had used pretty much local foundries around the Minneapolis area, and from the 1890s, I got one of them I showed you a couple of weeks ago. They were radically different, but then they went with Griswold. Now, pretty much all the Andresen irons you find, whether it's waffle irons or Kroomkaka, they have just the regular Griswold ball hinge on it, but this has an acorn hinge. So this is very early in their relationship with Griswold, and it comes with the base. That's a number 8 Griswold base. I don't know if you can quite see the size on it. That's a 975, I believe so. But yeah, that's a standard number 8 Griswold base. But like I said, this is an early one. They got away from the acorn hinge by about 1910 or so, I think it was. Or well, 1908. The 1908 patent and onward, they have just a regular ball hinge. So this is from around 1900, a couple of years either side of 1900, and that's probably one of the first couple of years that Griswold made irons for Andresen. So we'll get that cleaned up. That should turn out nice. I got a cat in the way right where I was going to set that. Come on. Move, you. Not going to move, are you? Come on. Ah. Just at the end of my reach. This one is a nice Wagnerware. That's a bigger one. That's a number 9 size. Do I have a Brilliant waffle iron? Picked up a low base, but never heard of the Brilliant waffle irons. They had one at that sale, but I was out of money by then because I bought all these things. That's a number 9 Wagnerware, basic number 9 Wagner waffle iron. That's a 1925 patent on that one. And you see that's got the wire handles. Got a little bigger loop on the end, a little heavier rod on them, but that's what your Wagner wire handles look like. But it had a tall base with it, and that base has most of its original lacquer finish on it yet. Got a little chip out of it, and it doesn't quite ring right. Sounds like it's got a crack somewhere, but I can't find it. I don't know where the hell it's cracked. Probably somewhere in the area where that little chip is out of there. But I'm just going to leave that because, like I said, that's got most of its original finish on that. They called that Japanning, and it's a sort of a lacquer. Usually a black lacquer for like waffle iron bases and things like that is what they did with them. And they would also tend to lacquer the pans. And a lot of them would say to scald the pans in boiling water for 5 minutes to get the lacquer off before you start using them. And when it says Japanned iron or lacquered iron, that's what they're talking about. So yeah, I probably won't do anything with that base just because it has most of the original finish on it, which is pretty cool. How large did they make waffle irons? The biggest I've seen is 9s. They may have made like a 10, but that's noticeably bigger than most of your waffle irons. I don't have a number 8 within hand's reach by chance. Was there an advantage of the high base over a low base? The idea behind the high base was you could use them on a gas grill with the low base, they were meant for going on a wood stove. You take the eye off of the stove, and when you wanted to turn your waffle over, put this back together, get it up where you can see. When you wanted to turn your waffle over, you would just spin it around. You could do that on a wood stove because you had the eye open underneath of it with a low base. But the once gas stoves started coming around, you couldn't flip them all the way around because it hit the burner. So they came out with the high base, which was high enough that you could then just spin them around. You can still use a low base waffle iron on a gas stove or an electric stove. You just got to pick it up, flip it over, then lay it back down. It's not as handy as just spinning it, but it still works. So, and my cat is right back in the way again, where I'm trying to put my stuff down. Over there, put that back. But there's no, as far as using them, the high base is nicer on a gas stove. And that's really the purpose of it. Got a free gas grill to do outside. Read it smokes like hell. Let me back up a bit here. Cast iron wood planes of Japan as well. Yeah, it was a real common finish on pretty much any metal product back in those days. Tools, the bases of waffle irons, things like that. But when you come across old advertisement and it says, Japan steel, Japan iron, that's what they're talking about. Yeah, I have to use mine with a low base on a gas stove. Yeah, I mean, it's, not quite as convenient, but it's, not too big of a deal. Can we use a waffle iron without a base? Yeah, you can on a lot of stoves anyway, as long as it's not a glass top because it won't lay flat. But on a, regular gas stove that has the grate over the top, or a electric stove with the regular burners, you can just lay the iron right on the burner. Is there a mid base between the high and low? The base was basically, the height of the base is pretty much determined by the diameter of the waffle iron. So it'd be big enough that it would clear when you spun it sideways. And a smaller waffle irons with a high base tend to be a little bit lower than like this number 9. That's got a really high base, so that there's enough room to clear it. But there's no real mid base. But they do vary in height. Like I said, depending on the size of the waffle iron. I have that crescent waffle iron I showed you. I have a high base for that, and it's not as high as the Wagner I just showed you because it's a smaller iron. Used a waffle iron without a base on a campfire once. Yeah, that would work. And they make irons that are meant for a campfire. They got a long handle on them, and you just hold them in the fire like you would a pie iron. Have you ever seen one of those? But anyway, the last thing I got was the thing that I really went to the sale for in the first place. I got me one here that shows clearest, a square Wagner waffle iron. That's a patent date of 1892. It's a really nice old one. It's in pretty good shape inside, nice and clean. And it's got got the base for it. Comes right with it. And again, these were, even though this is an 1892, it comes a lot older than the before the gas stoves really got big. The square irons wouldn't necessarily turn real good on a wood stove, so they usually gave them a higher base. And usually the square ones were more of a commercial type of waffle iron. But yeah, that's what I really went for. And I was tickled to death to get it because you very seldom see them. You don't see the square waffle irons all that often, especially the really older ones like this. So ended up paying $300 for that. It was a expensive little waffle iron, but overall I'd say it was worth it. But between that and that Wapak Indian head, I'm not going to be buying a whole lot of more expensive bits of iron for a while. It's amazing how things stay together for that long. Yeah, it's it's always kind of a miracle that things do hang together that long or things get separated. But something like a waffle iron, you can't really use the base for anything else. The bases are fragile though. It's pretty common for the bases to get broken and lost. But excuse me. It's fairly common for the bases to get broken because they're fairly fragile. But things like Dutch ovens, when you find the right lid for them, and they've always been together, that's pretty amazing because the lid for a Dutch oven works on frying pans, and lots of other things. So they tended to get separated a lot more often. You have one of those Ace donut cast irons, which you use directly on the burner. Those are cool. I've seen those around. There's like 3, 5, 6 cavities on some of them. There's different variations, and they look like they're pretty cool. I'd like to get one someday. But they go for pretty good prices. Need to find a square base for one of those. Yeah, that's you don't see them very often. And they so I definitely wanted to get that. That was the main thing I went for, and had a little bit of money left over, and I got the other two. Only paid $80 for that round Wagner, the high base one. Like I said, you can hear there's something not quite right with that base. It must have a crack somewhere. So I'm sure that kind of influenced the price. But for $80, I wasn't going to let it go away because you pay more for that for just the for the iron. Ms. French Twist, good to see you. Heart and Star low base waffle iron, good or fair price? They're expensive. There's 2 sizes of them. There's a number 18 and a number 19. The 18s are fairly common. They're not common, but the number 18s usually go 3 to 4, sometimes more than that. But $350, $400 for one of them isn't uncommon. The number 19s though go for anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000. I've seen them sell for, sometimes more than that even. They're really uncommon. You don't find the bigger ones very often. They were actually a number 8 and number 9. They just called them 18 and 19. But yeah, the big ones you're going to pay a fortune for if you come across one, and you don't come across the big ones very often. But for the low ones, yeah, they usually go around 350 ish. You had to spend that kind of money, at least you got some nice pieces for it. Yeah, like I said, I mean, you almost never see those square waffle irons with a base for them. You don't see them very often at all, much less with a good base. So it was worth worth picking up because you're not going to find one cheaper if you find one at all. Cooked with a square Griswold handle on the corner. It kind of messes with your mind. The handle's in the wrong place. They did make some, Griswold did. They made some squares that have the handle off of the side. It's in the middle of the side like a regular skillet. But yeah, it's kind of odd with them off the corner like that. Guy here has an 18 for 425. Yeah, that's not an unusual price for them. Around 400 is pretty much a going rate. If you can get it for less, you're doing good. More, you're probably not getting too screwed, but you're paying more than you really need to. You'd have to get a loan from Cynthia or Billy Lee to afford those kind of extravagances. Yeah, I don't buy really expensive things all that often, but I usually save up my pennies and dollar bills. You'd be surprised saving up pocket change, just so you change in a can at the end of the day when you come home. You can fairly easily save up $500 or so a year, assuming you don't have to go through and pick the quarters out because you're out of milk, cereal, and cigarettes. Buck and a half a day and loose change, from just doing your errands. And another thing is, don't spend dollar bills. Just save up your dollar bills. You've got $2 or $3 in change at the end of the day. Throw them in a drawer somewhere and let them accumulate. And that's how I usually pay my property taxes, is just by saving dollar bills. Sometimes you go out, run a bunch of errands, and you end up with, $15 in dollar bills in your pocket by the time you're done running. Just stick them in an envelope or cigar box or something under the bed, and they add up fairly fast. Like I said, that's usually how I pay my property taxes, and I'll have some left over too besides. Do that to turn it in every other month. It adds up fast. Yeah, you'd be surprised. A couple of dollars a day. 365 days in a year. If you could put away, $2 a day, that's $700 at the end of the year. And it's like I say, it's nothing to end up with $1.50, $2 worth of quarters and nickels at the end of the day when you're out and about. Like I said, with the change, if you got to go through and pick the quarters out because you need gas money or something like that, it takes a little longer to accumulate, but you can still do pretty good. Did you ever find the stolen money? Well, that was a cat that stole the $35, and yeah, I did find it eventually. I found $15 once, and then finally found the other 20. She had them kicked under things in the kitchen. Yeah, it took about 3 weeks before before it all finally turned up. Now Cynthia knows where I hide it. Yeah, I'll have to move my stash. You have a heavily used Wagner. You seasoned it last year. How do you keep your seasoning in a constant state of building up versus failing? Pretty much just using it. It's the seasoning you do when you season a pan in the oven is really just a base coat. That's to seal things up, get a little bit of, get a good start on your seasoning. But seasoning is kind of a dynamic process. You're always adding to it, and it's always wearing away at the same time. The more you use it, the more it'll get seasoned. But if you're using it, it's also going to wear away at the same time. So it's just a matter of using them, really, and that's what keeps your seasoning in the best shape. And all these pans I got hanging around here, the ones I've got all finished up and ready to use, I try and rotate through them, use them at least every now and then so they get used. And it's really the use that keeps your seasoning good. You're not going to build up. It's not like, constantly repainting something where you just keep building up layer after layer after layer, or at least it shouldn't be. And it's just a matter of using them, and that's what keeps your cast iron in the best shape. Already got a thief, the cat. Yeah, she hasn't. She's left my money alone, because I just emptied my pockets and put my stuff right here on my little table in front of the computer when I get home. She hasn't ran off with it in a while, but I'm sure one of these days I'll go to put my money in my pocket on the way out the door and it'll be gone. And then I'll have to spend time trying to find my cash again that the cat stole. If you have heavy buildup around the handle and the bottom ring, what do you do not to affect the inside parts? You can just use spray on oven cleaner if you got a lot of buildup on the bottom, and be careful not to spray it on the inside. And that generally works pretty good. Just using oven cleaner to get any excess off. Buildup on the sides, on the sides of the pan doesn't really hurt anything, even if it gets fairly heavy. You start getting too much buildup crusted on the bottom, that can make it heat up slower and heat unevenly because that carbon acts as an insulation. So yeah, if you get real heavy crusty buildup on the bottom, you want to take that off. But yeah, you can just spray the outside of the pan with oven cleaner, and that'll strip that off without. As long as you don't get it on the inside, it won't strip the inside. Let's see here. Skipped ahead just a bit on me. If I just want to build seasoning, I'll fry potatoes or cook eggs with a lot of oil. Yeah, that's what I do too, to break in a new pan after I get done seasoning it in the oven. Usually the first couple of times I'll use it, I'll just fry potatoes in it, and that really works good because there's the potatoes shed starch as you're cooking them, and that'll work into the metal and carbonize, and your pan will darken nice, and you get a nice seasoning going for them, and it breaks them in pretty good. Another question: do you feel that grapeseed oil at Crisco is better for seasoning, or a product like Easy Beasy works better? I use Easy Beasy quite a bit. I mean, it works good. I like the results you get with it. But you can also just use whatever oil you cook with the most to season with. Like I said, the seasoning that you do in the oven is really just the first step. So it's not really all that crucial. I've seasoned a lot of pans with clarified butter. That works good. Something with a higher smoke point does work better than something that's going to really scorch and burn easy. Olive oil is a bad one. I mean, it's okay to cook with olive oil, especially if you use a pan a lot. But olive oil will get sticky on you if you use it for seasoning and it sits for a while. It really tends to get tacky on you. But other than that, all things considered, they're usually pretty much equal as far as seasoning. Because, like I said, the seasoning you do in the oven is just the first step. The real seasoning comes from using it. Your cat hides your truck keys and you're late for work. Yeah, she's she'll come tearing across the room and slam into this table here. She's knocked the keyboard off a few times, knocked all kinds of things off. And for a cat, she's not terribly well coordinated. I mean, she's a clumsy little beast, actually. See you a cat thief and raise you a chewy pup. Your chop saw got a new plug for her. Yeah, I've had English Mastiffs, and when they're going through the really bad chewing phase as a puppy, it's you got to get them something big to chew on, like a tire, because otherwise they'll eat your furniture or start chewing on walls. Crisco is just vegetable oil. Yeah, I mean it is canola oil. If you're just doing one or two pans, whatever you cook with will usually work to get a start on your seasoning. You recommend Patriot to sell items. Your My Pet number 8 isn't getting bids. Uh, I assume there's a time limit when the bids close. A lot of times people won't bid until the last hour on things. It's just the way it works. You don't want to run the price up on yourself too soon. Get a lot of interest and run the price up right away. So I wouldn't be terribly worried about it. Until you get down to the last couple of hours. Do I recommend using wooden spatulas versus metal? No, it doesn't matter. You can use metal on cast iron. If you have the type of seasoning that's going to scratch off, it's not really good seasoning. A lot of people there for a while, flaxseed oil was really popular for seasoning cast iron, but it was kind of a pain because you'd have to put down layer after layer after layer and really thin, really careful, otherwise it wouldn't stick. It'd start flaking off. Well, linseed oil is, or flaxseed oil is just food grade linseed oil, and what you're doing is actually varnishing your pan, really. And with that, if you used a metal spatula, I think something like that, metal spoon, you would scratch through that hard layer of varnish basically, and you get moisture under there to start flaking around that. But truly seasoned pan, you're not going to scratch that off there with a metal implement. Most of my stuff is pretty much all metal, except for I got wooden spoons for stirring, but all my spatulas, things like that, are metal, and it doesn't really matter. I have an unmarked waffle iron that has a base with a handle and turns by flipping the waffle iron. The patterns is clubs, diamonds, hearts, and circles. The hardest thing I've ever cleaned. Yeah, waffle irons can be a pain. Like I said, my masochism knows no bounds getting three of them to clean up. But I'll get it eventually. Uh, Canola is right at the same temperature as grapeseed oil and a fourth the price. Yeah, it's definitely price is definitely a concern. Like I said, flaxseed oil was popular, but it's a lot more expensive, and it's one of the few oils that will go bad. Within I mean, everything will go bad eventually, but most cooking oils, things like that, have a shelf life of years and years. Well, flaxseed oil would turn rancid after about a year, so you spend big money for a small bottle and you gotta throw it away 8 months later. It's not the best thing. The earth isn't flat because cats would have knocked everything off. Yeah, pretty much. Their cats just got to have things on the floor. It's hit or miss. You've had pulled items, then relist them, and they go crazy. Yeah, I mean, auction sites are always kind of weird. I mean, I've seen things. You see things go dirt cheap, and the same thing 2 days later will go for a fortune. It's you know, for some reason people just don't notice it. Sometimes I don't know exactly what is going on, but it's just the way it is. Let's see. I had a huge surprise this morning. He used a new bottle and couldn't figure out why it smelled oil. It was black and garlic olive oil. Yeah, that would start wondering why it smelled so weird. Corn stick pans have been your worst item to get right. Yeah, they're a pain to clean. Yeah, I mean I like them. They're neat things to have and they work real good, but they are a pain in the ass to get them cleaned. Do I have any cast iron pressure cookers? Uh, I haven't really seen any cast iron pressure cookers. Some kind of, usually they're cast aluminum. I'm sure there's probably a few of them out there, but for pressure, you're better off with aluminum because it's got a little more, it's got more stretch and resilience to it. Get a microfiber car glove with all the little fingers, makes corn stick pans easy. Yeah, I mean they're not hard to season and get it into the cracks. It's trying to scrub them out and get the rust and the crust and corrosion out from all the little kernels in there. Sounds like you got a Lucky Charms waffle iron. Yeah, bacon grease is nice and dark. Grapeseed is a bronze color. Yeah, the so's clarified butter. It'll have kind of a bronzy color at first, but over time they'll blacken regardless of what you start with, pretty much. Thought I read that the only cast iron pressure cookers are so thick you couldn't lift them. They had to be thick to keep from shattering. Yeah, it's like I said, the cast aluminum's got more flexibility and ductility to it. So I'm sure there have been a few, but I've never actually seen one. Always thought it'd be neat to own an Iron Maiden for decoration in your cast iron room. I had to step away, but did you say that some waffle iron rings, stand rings, are stamped? I haven't seen any, stamped steel ones. All the ones I've seen have been cast. It's possible, some import brand or something like that, or some cheap brand might have made a stamped sheet metal waffle, base for a waffle iron, but I haven't seen any. I mean, it's not impossible, but not that I know of. Not buying any more cast iron until you figure out exactly what you have. Good luck with that. You'll discover that as you're going through it, you'll go, I know I have one of those. Where the hell is that? Only one you saw was about 3 foot tall, and the sides are like 6 inches thick. I think it was converted from an oil field pressure tank. Yeah, it could have been. I know a lot of the really big commercial, they don't call them a pressure cooker or canner. They're usually a retort for canning, within actual cans. I know that a lot of those are cast steel, which is a lot tougher than a cast iron. But, like I say, yeah, I don't think I've ever come across a cast iron pressure cooker for home use. Is there an Iron Maiden cast iron pan I don't know about? There could very well be, or cast aluminum. I mean, there's a lot of Nordic ware made a lot of skull and skeleton cake molds. Might have made an Iron Maiden cake mold, but it'd more likely be cast aluminum. Watching a Wapak Z logo right now. Cool. Yeah, Wapak made several different logos over the time. There's a tapered logo. It starts off big and gets smaller. The Z logo, where it's got kind of a Z shape underline to it. Then the block logos. Remember your folks having an electric waffle iron with cast iron cooking plates long time ago? Yeah, those were they kind of switched over to aluminum at some point. I'm not sure when, but a lot of the really old ones had iron plates in them. Is it kind of a sickness, the whole looking and purchasing cast iron? I'm sure it is. I mean, it's like any other collecting type things. You know, some people get into baseball cards or coins or anything like that. So I'm sure there's definite psychology behind it. And there's always a lot of enjoyment in the pursuit and finding of things. You know, it's not so much owning it as it is finding it, restoring it. You know, the thrill of the hunt type of deal. You ready for spring? Iron is scarce right now. Yeah, you don't see a whole lot of cast iron in the secondhand stores or even antique shops for that matter. They kind of run a little bit low this time of year. You know, it's always pretty dry from January on up until getting into April is when people usually start doing spring cleaning and things start coming out and getting sold. Seen lots of advertisement, cast iron, Star Wars, and others. Never thought I saw an Iron Maiden rock and roll bread pan or not. Husband found a waffle iron on Marketplace he had to have. Has like 18-inch handles. Yeah, that it's the which one of them two? I think it was the button hinge waffle iron I got a few months ago. They were wrong handles for it. In fact, I got a couple that I made. It had those on it for handles, and I'm pretty sure those aren't the ones that actually belong on it. And one of them was pretty chewed up, so I made a replacement handle for it. I got a pair of these. I like those long handles. Those would be kind of nice once I get her all done. So that's, as they say, that's a project for another day. Met a guy who was telling me he finds lots of Griswolds here in Louisiana. Didn't believe him until he brought a few by your house to show you. More west of you. Yeah, I mean, it used to be a lot more regional. I mean, you tended to find more BSR and Lodge in the south and more Wagner and Griswold in the north. But you know, over the years, it kind of evened out. But some areas you just don't see some brands, and when you do, they get snapped up pretty quick because you don't see them there very often. It's the same with Canadian cast iron and American. You don't see much American cast iron in Canada, or a whole lot of Canadian iron in the United States. And it's strange because there's tons and tons of Canadian cast iron, but you don't see it very often in the U.S. This has cast iron handles, biggest waffle iron you ever seen. I have to put a picture of it up on the Facebook page when you get a chance. It sounds like it'd be pretty cool. Figured the Iron Maiden reference was a torture device in the cake mold, not the rock band. Yeah, I don't know if they actually do, but they really should have an Iron Maiden, not the rock band, the torture device. They really should make one if they haven't already. I mean, Nordic Ware has made, like say, a lot of really cool cake molds. I don't watch auction sites, but I do rather enjoy hunting for them in the wild. Everything you picked up and restored to give into your daughters. Oh yeah, that's a good way of doing it. Auction sites are nice if nothing else, so you can get some idea of what things are selling for. It's helpful with that. But yeah, it is kind of more fun, finding it out in the wild somewhere, rather than, and you don't have to pay shipping when you can actually, pick it up and take it home with you. What kind of finish did I put on those new wood handles? The where'd that go? Cat probably knocked it off. Oh, there's one. I made some like this. That's for an Anderson an Anderson Croomcock iron, and that I used a black lacquer finish. A lot of the wooden waffle iron handles originally had a black lacquer finish on them. These ones, though, I used it's a butcher block finish. It's, kind of an oil base, food grade uh, butcher block oil. Same thing I used on my butcher block, strangely enough. But a lot of the Wagner ware ones had more of a natural finish. I'm not exactly sure what they had, but you can see on a lot of the on the Griswold waffle irons that they had a black lacquer. Found a made in Canada last week. It was a GSW with a wooden handle. Cool. Yeah, I mean you don't see very much cast iron or Canadian cast iron in the U.S., especially a wooden handle one. Those are a good bit more scarce. I think the only Canadian cast iron I found in the wild around here was a Javelin. And that's a brand that was made in Quebec. But yeah, you don't see much around here for Canadian cast iron. So if you do come across it, it's definitely worth getting. There's number 8 Griswold cast iron on cast and Clarabelle with a tall base for 410. Uh, yeah, 400 for a number 8, even a high base is pretty steep. Pretty steep for a Griswold. The high base Griswold, low base Griswold usually goes about 150, somewhere around there, 125, 175 in that range. A high base usually around 200, but unless there's something really rare and unusual about it, unless it's an old, an Erie or it has a button hinge or something like that, 410 for a high base Griswold's pretty high. Use tongue oil on some cast iron restored. Never thought of using tongue oil for anything, for well, other than wood, but javelins are hefty. Yeah, it's a chunky pan. Your really old Le Creuset skillet has a lacquered wood finish coming off, of course. Yeah, it can flake. I mean, if it's a little too heavy, it depends on the exact formula of it. The lacquer will get hard and flake sometimes, but a lot of times on wood, it'll penetrate pretty good, so it soaks in and stays there. You'd think that far north would be plenty of Canadian iron. Yeah, you would think so, but strangely, most of the cast iron Canadian cast iron I've seen on different auction sites for sale was either in the Pacific Northwest or in the South. It's either like Alabama or Oregon, and I don't know why. I mean, Oregon I can see, because it's right on the, it's right up there next to Canada. But yeah, you don't see very much, very much Canadian cast iron in most of the northern states, which is kind of odd. But there was plenty of American iron, locally, so they didn't really export it. And the same in Canada. I mean, there's a lot of different Canadian makers in the Canadian steel and iron industry, so they pretty much just kept their own stuff and didn't export much of it. The GSW was $60. The shop owner said they were having a slow season, so I left to think over. I grab it for $60. Like I said, you just don't see them very often in the U.S. They're not. I mean, even though they're uncommon, they're not hugely valuable and expensive. But a wooden handled GSW definitely worth $60. That's what you thought. You're thinking more like 200. Yeah, usually the high base Griswold waffle irons go for around $200, give or take. Is a no notch arc logo lodge more desirable than a single notch arc logo? I don't know. I mean, they sell for pretty much the same price that I've seen. The no notch is a little more different, I guess. So yeah, it'd probably be a little bit more desirable because Lodge is pretty much known for having the notches in the heat ring. That was their trademark for years and years and years. So one without a notch, would probably be a little bit more desirable, but it's more the ARC logo on them, really. For some reason, Clarabelle has higher than usual prices. Yeah, some places, they think they're exclusive boutiques and really run the prices up. I think he means the handles with tongue oil. Probably. Now that you've mentioned it, yeah, it wouldn't make much sense to use it on the iron, but definitely on the wooden handles. Don't see how some of them sell so high on Etsy, but they sell a ton. Yeah, if you can get the money for it, I guess. But anyway, we're getting towards the end here. It's already an hour and 3 minutes, so we'll wrap her up here. Get caught up a little bit. I wonder if wood epoxy handle would work on waffle irons. Look cool, but would the epoxy melt? Maybe. I mean, you'd definitely have to look into the epoxy itself. Some of them can take pretty high temperatures, but some of them can't. So you'd have to research it and see what the temperature range for that sort of stuff would be. What are the premier cast iron brand names? I don't know about premier. I mean, there's quite a few: Findlay, GSW, Javelin. I mentioned, but there's quite a number of them if you start looking into it. And like Findlay, GSW, Smarts is another one. Findlay, Smarts, and another company merged to form GSW. So there's and they traded a lot of patterns back and forth between them. So it gets pretty confusing on some of their stuff. But like I said, Javelin, T. Eaton, which was actually a department store that contracted and had a line of cookware made for them by one of the other companies. They're fairly well known. But yeah, I mean, it's really a whole nother rabbit hole looking into Canadian cast iron. Anyhow, like I said, we'll wrap this up here. It's been over an hour. Go back to bed and get ready to go to work tomorrow. How about fireplace and grill black coating for the handles? I wouldn't recommend it because it tends to wipe off. It's got graphite in it that never really dries, so you're going to end up getting black smudged off your handles if you use stove black for your handles. So no, I wouldn't use it. Anyhow, like I said, we'll see you guys next week. We'll think of something else to talk about, something else to do, and hopefully you enjoyed the show. And we will see you all next time. Bye.